and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Taylor. I am a first year, soon to be second year law school student and a certified personal trainer, taking you all along the law school journey with me and showing you how I do my best to live a healthy, happy, and productive life in the process. This is going to be my little 1L reflections video. So I have done 2 of these videos prior, like a first semester part 1 and a first semester part 2. Once I got my first semester grades, I will make sure that both of those pop up in little cards above. So if you want to watch those, you are more than welcome to. They are also reflections kind of like this one. This one just kind of adds some additional context because there are certain special things about spring. So, and just kind of, you know, bringing it all together. But there are probably some things that I mentioned in that one that may be useful if you are coming into law school and it's your first year, that will not be mentioned in this video. So go check those 2 out as well. And we will dive straight into the content of this video and this semester. So the first thing to talk about is classes. So 1L has a set curriculum and I took 3 of those classes in the fall. I took contracts, property, and torts in the fall, and then I took criminal law, constitutional law, and civil procedure. Almost forgot that. This semester, you'd think it's only been like a week since I've been done. One thing that I noticed this semester is there wasn't quite as much of a disconnect, where last semester I had one class that I didn't align with the teaching style that much, and then I didn't align with the subject matter and the way that the subject matter was taught. And I didn't have that same experience as much this semester. So it's all just a game of the professors you get, and is like being able to like click with the way that people think. Because there are certain professors whose like thinking style and teaching style I really just instantly connect with. For me, one of the things that I think distinguished classes where even the material itself wasn't that exciting, that I still liked, is that the professors teaching those classes thought similarly to me, which doesn't like, I don't mean like had like similar opinions. I just mean like they thought about things kind of similarly. So my contracts class, which is the kind of the class that I like didn't really vibe with in fall semester, my contracts professor was very like econ theory minded, and I am very much a person that theory is great, but I love to see practical application. And so for me, like my property class had a lot of like practical application of like, this is what this looks like in the real world. And so that just kind of like made me much more interested in the subject matter. That being said, I didn't quite have any classes this semester where I just felt like wildly separated from the material or from the teaching style of my professor. I did this semester have like the law school professor that goes rogue. So I had a couple of instances where like reading assignments were changed the day of, or the day before, or during class the reading assignments were changed. As you know, a lot of other like professors, and sometimes most law school classes, it's very structured, and you like get your like schedule of what you're going to read at the beginning of the semester, and it stays that way, and they like stick to that. And then I've had now, you know, the other side of things where it's a little bit more random, and you have to be prepared for like a last minute change in reading that involves you waking up early to read something that wasn't originally scheduled to be taught that day. And one of the other things too about that kind of like, I guess, rogue, I don't know why that's just the word that I want to use, but one of the other things is that his cold calls were a lot more unpredictable, in the sense that there is not quite as much of like a, I'm asking you questions directly about the case. There's more like other random questions thrown in there about completely random things that like you have no way of knowing. And I think if anything, that just made me like really comfortable with cold calls and like not knowing the answer. Like I think people tend to think that like if a law school professor is asking you something, you have to have an answer for them. Like you have to know whatever weird background knowledge they're trying to like pluck out if they ask you it. And sometimes they just want an excuse to talk. I think that's, sometimes that's how like Socratic method stuff plays out. And it's totally like, I think first semester, early fall, Taylor would have like panicked for questions like, do you know anything about X? When X is some weird subject that I've never heard of. I would be terrified to have to be like, no, I know nothing. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what's like, I would have been terrified to do that. And spring semester Taylor's like, I know absolutely nothing. Go on, tell me. And I don't think that that necessarily makes you a bad student. That doesn't make your cold call a bad cold call. I literally did that in the middle of a cold call, and that's the cold call that like I got an email from a professor afterwards being like, you did great today. So that being said, it is okay to not know the answer to something, especially if it's something you just haven't read. Like not knowing the answer to something that you like should have read and like should know, not as great. But like if they're asking you an off the wall question, like who cares? And if they care that you don't know some weird obscure fact, I don't know what to tell you. That's not your problem. Luckily, I didn't really have professors who like cared a lot. Wow. I'm good with the English language. I didn't have professors that cared a ton about that. And so it's just what it is. One thing that I did mention in my first semester video that I wanted to do better this semester, and something that I actually followed through on, is note-taking like during class. Last semester, I don't know how I did this, but I just like never took notes in class, with the exception of one class where we were like, everything was on a PowerPoint slide and you like had to take notes on it. And because it wasn't in the book, I just like kept my case notes and like added on to those. It worked, but having like consolidated class notes is definitely a plus. And some of it ends up like duplicated from like things that you like have in like your notes for your case, which all my case notes are literally they were just highlights in my book. So it wasn't really necessarily duplicated, but I took notes again on cases when we were discussing them in class. And one of the things that I found that really, really helps with this is not only do you like, you know, have notes from class, which are good, this helped me so much in going in and making my outlines, because I had all of that information already and I had it like really easily accessible and like organized. And I wasn't just like digging through old cases and digging up random things to try to create my outlines. So that helps a lot. I didn't realize that wasn't something that was like on my mind when I made that resolution, but having detailed class notes really helps when you are trying to pull together an outline. With outlining itself, I've noticed a thing for me personally compared to, I think, looking at outlines that are like A, like commercial-ish outlines, and B, like old student outlines, and my outlines are so short. My default outline is basically what I guess anyone else would call an attack outline. It is like 20 pages or less. It is distilled down. Like I don't spend a ton of time like copying. It is not my notes done over again. It is a very, very condensed version of like the high points, and that's what works for me. I think that I didn't like necessarily like set out to make that my format, but it's just when I was making outlines and was picking out like, this is the most important thing, this is what I want to highlight, this is what I want in my like study materials, I just make things shorter. I like having like, you know, my like one sentence thing that I can look at and it kind of sums up the point for me. And if I need a little bit more detail in that to jog my memory about some specific thing, I can go dig that up from my notes and I know exactly where to find it because I like know what section it's in. That's massively what I prefer, and I think that has worked well for me rather than having a 60-page outline. Once again, it is a totally like person to person thing. Some people I'm sure would find that super helpful to like rewrite all of their notes again basically into one giant file and like treat that as their outline. I much prefer the like short thing because the short thing can like jog my memory for the longer, more detailed thought process. That's also just kind of a remnant of the way that I think. Like I didn't want to have to scroll through all of these details about the case, because if you tell me the main holding of the case, I can just like remember the other details about it. So that's how my memory works. And so for me, there's not as much value in having all of that detail. So that's a thing that worked for me and a thing that I noticed in my own work throughout the semester. The other thing to, I guess, reflect on, chat about is extracurriculars. So I definitely mentioned this in my fall video, and it's just kind of a thing that carried over, and it's just like extracurricular involvement. It's something that I found like super valuable for me in my first year, especially just having a way to connect through a lot of different law school organizations are based on like issue areas. And so like I was very involved in 2 relatively political organizations that were dealing with like aspects of the law that I'm really passionate about. And when you're taking this like preset stack of courses that you don't get a lot of choice in, it's nice to have this like outlet where you can attend all these different meetings where they like bring in different people who are experts about different things and hear them chat about it. And it's a bit more like related to what you actually want to do with your life than say a torts class. So I really, really enjoyed that. And one of the really fun things that I got to do, I don't know if this is like a thing at all law schools, but it is a thing at my law school, where the first year involvement, you can be on like a first year board for different organizations, and on that first year board you get the opportunity to like plan and put on an event. And so I got to do that for 2 different organizations that I was a part of, and I had so much fun with it. I got to put on a like talk about this future of the Supreme Court and like moderate it. Like I was like really, that was the one I was really, really involved in, and I had so much fun with that. I like really enjoyed it to the point that I'm now like a co-president of that organization for 2 whole years, so that I can kind of continue to do that and continue to put on events like that. But it's just such a fun way to get involved and to kind of like give back, I guess, but to kind of test the waters for if you want to do like student organization leadership your 2 whole year. It's a great way to like dip your toe in, but like it also was never like, you know, a ton of work either. So it's very, very manageable. And if your law school has opportunities like that, I highly recommend it. It's just such a great way to like also to get to know people too. Now we have the like thing that makes spring semester what it is, and it is the 1L job search. It is a process, and I think a couple of tips. 1, start early, like start December, start as soon as you finish your finals, like crank into it. I think in some ways I was a little bit too chill in December, and I could have been like cranking out a lot more. That being said, timeline all over the place. I think I'm speaking more from my experience. I only applied to public interest for this summer. I was really only interested in doing public interest this summer. So the timeline, if you're trying to get a firm position, might be different and worth talking to your career center about. That's an email. Something that is really, really important to keep in mind, and is something that I struggled to keep in mind. And I think no matter how important, I say this is like super important to keep in mind, there's a sense that like the anxiety is going to happen no matter what. And it is that everything happens on your own timeline. Don't fret too much about like your classmates getting positions. I had this thing for a while where I would just go on LinkedIn every day and just like look for people's updates about like what position they'd been offered and accepted. Don't do that. Literally, I was just doing it to like give myself further anxiety. Like that's not a good thing to do. And it all works out. Like everyone that I know like had something come up for them in the end, but it's just stay in your own lane, focus on yourself, do whatever you can, but don't absolutely lose it if you don't have a job by mid-March. There are so many different timelines. There are so many different positions that just opened up throughout the process. And I ended up, you know, for someone who was on a call with someone at the Career Center in mid-March-ish, just like absolutely panicking because I was convinced that I just was somehow unhireable and just couldn't figure out what was going on. Literally like fast forward 2 weeks and I had 5 job offers. So I had to turn down a bunch of offers for the summer. So like chill. That is my message to anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. Just breathe and just keep sending out applications. Like that's the only thing I can say. Like I think I came into this with a lot of my like previous experiences in mind, and my previous job experiences were very much like one and done, which is not an advisable way to handle applying for jobs. But I very much was the type of person in previous positions where like I just sent out like a few applications, and once I got an interview offer, I stopped applying for anything else, and I got that position. That worked out for me before law school. Did not quite work out for me in law school. So don't put your eggs in a basket. Keep applying to things even after you get interview offers. Keep applying for things no matter what, and just, you know, it takes up a lot of time. Set off like blocks in your schedule. Also, highly recommend just like a cover letter format that's like really easy to tweak per organization. I don't know if anyone wants more like actual like cover letter resume tips. I can do a video on that, so if you want that, let me know. But clearly it worked eventually, but it is a process, and it was something that I very much got in my own head about and very much needed to calm down about. And that's really it. Then I had finals, and I have nothing meaningful to reflect on, I guess. They felt very similar to last semester's finals, with the exception of the fact that I had no, like, my contracts final from last semester was a nightmare for its own reasons. I didn't have one of those this semester, which is good. I also had a weird 24-hour exam, which was very hard to study for, because I just got it in my head that I was like, I don't need to study for this, because I have 24 hours to write it, so I can look up anything I need to. And then was hoping someone would call me out on that, and then every person I talked to was like, yeah, that's great, good for you, Taylor, that's healthy. And I'm like, you weren't supposed to tell me that. But hopefully it all worked out in the end. I will, as I did last semester, probably do a part 2 of this. If I remember, I might do like a live reacting to my grades thing, and we'll see how that goes. I don't even know when grades are coming out, so who knows when that's gonna happen. But for now, these are my reflections sans grades. So it was a time, and we're done with 1L. We're moving on to 2L. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, found it helpful, whatever. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, there is a subscribe button down below, and I will see you soon for another new video. Bye.